you really buying a car online on AutoTrader right now?
Really, I can get super specific with dealer listings and see cars based on my budget.
You can really have it delivered.
Or pick it up.
Mommy, look!
I think your kid is walking up the slide.
Really?
AutoTrader. Buy your car online. Really?
TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic. Folding a fitted bedsheet. Listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team. Digging a hole. Digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun. But TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. And Eric Lavine, noted attorney, commentator, essayist. I am Judge Richard Weinberg. Our good friend and co-host Jesse Garcia is out today with a bug. Hopefully he'll be back in good shape, fighting form with us next week on next week's show.
I just want to observe that I'm probably the only one of the three of us that's never not been on the show because I don't feel well. I mean,
yeah. Well, you
guys are just weak.
You're also the youngest, so I mean, don't show.
I'm not sure. I think Jesse's younger
show.
than I am, but I'm not sure. Anyway,
don't
just an observation.
Just an observation. So let's turn our attention, as important as that is, let's turn our attention to the Iran war update. So let me give you my thoughts on this, Eric. This was a just war, as the papal encyclicals used to call them, a just war. It was a necessary war. It was not a war of so-called choice. It wasn't a rush to judgment to declare war because there wasn't a threat. The law is very, very clear. The constitutional power is very clear. The president does not need a vote of the Congress to declare the war. He has the power under his executive authorities, under our Constitution, to protect and defend this country. Nor, notwithstanding the commentators who use the word that there wasn't a imminent threat, it doesn't have to be imminent. It just has to be real. So the question becomes, do you wait until they have the nuclear bomb and they're going to launch it against our West Coast and say, oh, yeah, it's imminent now, maybe we can do something about it, or not? So let's be clear. The Iranians are clear and present danger to the United States of America, to Western Europe, to Israel, to their Arab neighbors, and in fact to world civilization. So what do? They had every opportunity to cut a deal. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of cutting a deal. I want to be very clear to our listeners, because the only thing you can trust about them cutting a deal is that they will break it, try to go around it, use subterfuge, lie to your face. It's part of their culture. They have religious tracts that excuse lying and making false agreements. It's all swell. Certainly politically, that's what they've done. You thought they would have a commission after the June situation where the United States and Israel took out, as far as they're concerned, the nuclear capacity, but they were in the process of rebuilding it. They were certainly rebuilding their ballistic missile capacity, their drone capacity. You cannot wait for evil people who say death to America and death to Israel to be fully armed, building about 100 ballistic missiles a month, having thousands of these, and drones, which are much cheaper to make and easier to make, and have drone factories buried underground. You cannot wait until they can overwhelm you with that kind of attack. President Trump did the right thing. If you want to be politically cute, he could have passed this down the road to the next president or waited till after the election. But President Donald Trump, to his credit, has done the right thing to protect and defend this country. Something, with all due respect to Presidents Carter, Obama, and Biden, each one in their own unique and special way failed to do to protect and defend this country, particularly Obama and Biden. So Trump's in this war. Now, I have a problem with what's happening so far, and let me lay it out for you. Yes, they've taken out the Iranian Navy, and yes, they've taken out the Air Force of the Iranians, and yes, they've taken out key first string and second string leadership. I agree, that's fine. And yes, they've dismantled some of the state institutions. But Trump is too easily saying the war is over, declare a victory. You don't take a victory lap too quickly. You have to make sure the job is done. The job will not be done until there's regime change. It will not be done until the whole apparatus of a terrorist state is dismantled. Because if you go out too quickly, declare victory, and pound your chest, they'll be back as soon as they can, even more aggrieved in their psychotic minds, to come after the United States and Europe again. Speaking of Europe, Eric, the gutlessness, the foolishness, the naivete of European leaders is frightening. Whether it's the Spanish socialist prime minister, whether it's the prime minister of England, who would not allow the United States to use military bases, Air Force bases, cause the United States to have to go around to make a longer treks. The fact of the matter is they are under attack too. If they think somehow they're going to be immune from this Islamist, hegemonic, psychotic delusion that they will conquer the world and have everybody submit to their religious and political doctrines, they're kidding themselves. You need strong leadership from Europe, which has failed. What this country...
It's oxymoronic.
Indeed it is. What this country needs is strong leadership, and in Donald Trump we have it. What Europe needs is strong leadership. It needs Winston Churchill. It needs Margaret Thatcher. It doesn't need apologists who are so afraid of the Islamist communities that they've allowed in to their borders to subvert their cultures and their laws by foolish, naive immigration policies, allowed people in, some legally, some illegally, who are not committed to the values, the customs, the laws, the cultures of the host countries. Your turn, Eric.
So I want to start with this concept of the war of choice. Every war is a war of choice. You can always choose to surrender. The French did it in World War II.
They were good at that.
They're very good at that. So every war is a war of choice. I don't know what that means, that this is a war of choice or not a war of choice. It's either in your national security interest to go to war or it's not. And I believe 100% that Donald Trump made the right call. Now, Richard, you talk about other presidents. We are in this, and you tie that to this concept of making a deal. We are in this position. Donald Trump was forced to fight this war. And that's another thing I want to say for a second. This isn't Donald Trump choosing a war. Iran has been at war with us for 47 years. Donald Trump has finally chosen to fight back. So this notion that he has started a war is outrageous. But we are in this position. It is a much more difficult war to win because of the deal, a deal. Barack Obama's JCPOA nuclear deal is why we are in this situation today. What did that nuclear deal do? When Barack Obama became president, it was illegal under international law for Iran to enrich any uranium. So Barack Obama went to the UN and made sure they lifted that restriction and allowed Iran to enrich uranium. And the deal provided that by the year 2030, there'd be no limitations on Iran's ability to enrich uranium, meaning he created a legal path to a nuclear weapon for the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And talking about the leading state sponsor of terrorism, as part of the deal, for which we got absolutely nothing, Barack Obama lifted sanctions on Iran and gave them $115 billion with which to fund their international terrorist network, fund its military, fund its internal Nazi police force, and fund its hegemonic goals in the region, and fund its ability to make war and kill Americans. That was the wisdom and brilliance of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. So every time some moronic Democrat like Senator Tim Kaine or Chris Murphy or other gas bags like that make this point of, oh, we had this deal. No, we are in this situation because Barack Obama had this deal and Chuck Schumer did not have the courage or guts or moral compass to stand up and say no when he had the opportunity. And now we're in a much more difficult position. So this isn't all wars are wars of choice. So that's a meaningless meme when people put that out there. Richard, you're 100% right on this concept of imminent. I don't know what imminent means. So was it imminent when the Iranians stormed the American embassy in 1979 and held American hostages for 444 days? Was the war imminent then? Was it imminent when Iran blew up 242 Marines in the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983? Was it imminent then? Was it imminent when they blew up the Khobar Towers and killed 20 American service members? Was it imminent then? Was it imminent when they launched hundreds of attacks on American service members in Iraq and Syria during the Biden administration? Was it imminent then? Was it imminent when they killed and wounded 1/3 of the American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan? Well, they're responsible for the deaths and maiming of 1/3 of the service members in Iraq and Afghanistan. Was it imminent then? I don't know what this concept of imminent means. So if they kill us and they attack us, the moment's passed and it's no longer imminent. And Richard, you're 100% right. According to gas bags like Tim Kaine and Chris Murphy, we need to wait until the nuclear warhead is on the launch pad and ready to go. But even then, it's not imminent because for them, a mushroom cloud over Tel Aviv or Jerusalem is the warning to the United States. So it may not even be imminent then, because of Israel, of course, would be the first target. So these memes of wars of choice, imminent, we had a deal, that's all garbage. Donald Trump is fighting the right war. We've been at war for 47 years, and he's finally choosing to fight back. So where are we now? One thing we have learned, talking about Europe, is that the United Kingdom is no longer our closest and dearest ally. Keir Starmer is a gutless coward. He is a gutless coward. So the UK is not standing with us. The UK isn't even standing with the UK. I mean, the one fact you just have to know is that the United Arab Emirates a few months ago made a declaration that it will not pay for any of its citizens to go to study in the UK to get a college degree for fear that they'll be radicalized. The United Arab Emirates, a Gulf state, will not send their students to be educated in Great Britain because they're concerned they'll be radicalized. That's where the UK is. It's really remarkable. And yesterday or the day before, Spain has broken off diplomatic relations with Israel because they don't like the way the Israelis are treating the Palestinians. The United States and Israel at war with Iran, defending Western civilization, and Spain is breaking diplomatic relations with Israel. That's who the Europeans are. The Moors would be very proud. Who needed, they actually won. But where are we in the war today? The United States and Israel have been systematically destroying their ballistic missiles, have been destroying Iran's launch pads, because you can have as many ballistic missiles as you want. If you don't have the ability to launch them, it doesn't really matter. So they've been systematically taking those out. Israel, as you pointed out, has taken out the leadership and targeted killings of the Iranian leadership. The Israelis have to do it because it's a question under U.S. law whether or not an American president can do that. So the Israelis have been doing that. But importantly, we have been flying side by side, fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Israelis in a way not seen by two allies since World War II. Israel is now America's closest and most reliable ally in the world. That used to be UK until they crawled under Iraq. And by the way, I think I read yesterday that Winston Churchill is being taken off the British pound.
That's correct.
And they're going to put animals on there.
That's right.
Animals.
What does that mean? They want to erase history.
Yeah. So you're going to take the guy who saved Western civilization and you're going to put an ostrich on there.
Actually, it's not a bad metaphor.
Yeah,
hide your head like an ostrich.
That's why I said it. See,
very clever.
Don't listen to what other people say. You're not as dumb as they say. It's okay. It's okay.
You hear this?
There you go.
And this is the common sense Republican insulting the common sense Democrat.
There you go. So what have the Iranians done? I mean, they've just been, when Donald Trump's talking about they're just being obliterated, he's 100% right. Their ballistic missiles are being obliterated. Their nuclear programs are being obliterated. Their leadership is being obliterated. Their police, internal police forces being obliterated. Police stations are being blown up. So the infrastructure that supports their terror network is being destroyed. So what's the Iranian response right now? They've decided to close the Straits of Hormuz. Now let's analyze that for a second. Roughly 90% of Iran's economy comes from oil, and roughly 80 to 85% of its exported oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So one would say to yourself, why would they do that? Because they're strangling their own economy. Yes, they are. But the message they are sending is the following. We can endure more pain than you can for longer than you can, and we're willing to wait you out. They're saying we are prepared to cripple our economy because we really don't care if our people die. We don't care if we shoot them in the streets. So if we're prepared to shoot 30, 40,000 people in the streets, we're prepared to have 30, 40,000, 50,000, 100,000 people die of starvation or poverty. We don't care. We don't care about our own people. So we can absorb this pain. But you in the United States and in the West and around the world, we're going to try and drive up oil prices. We're going to try and ruin your economy. And we think that you do not have the will to hold out. We think we can wait you out. And that's where Donald Trump can't allow them to do that. And that's part of the reason why what the Democrats are doing, or opponents to this war are doing, gas bags like Tucker Carlson on the right, who are decrying this war, but when they focus on the economic pain, we're suffering, look at oil prices. Yeah, we want to keep oil prices low to the extent that we can.
What's the price you pay for that?
Yeah, so what is it? Roughly 10. You're paying 10 cents when you fill up a tank of
when
gas.
I ask you, what's the price? So you're going to allow these people to come back at you and destroy you?
Yes,
for 10 cents a gallon?
Exactly. If you really look at it in terms of you're going to drive somewhere, you pay a couple bucks more to go on a trip. I think that's something we should be willing to absorb, because in the long run, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon and if we don't fight this fight, then they're going to have a complete stranglehold on our economy whenever they want. But when you have Democrats like Chris Murphy and Tim Kaine and other leading Democrats, Chuck Schumer included, whining and bitching about, the economy, the price of oil is going up, we can't stand it, you are giving succor to the Iranians. You are convincing them that their strategy is the right strategy.
Isn't that exactly, by the way, what Kerry, our very distinguished Secretary of State, did as a prize assistant after he left the administration? He went to Iran and he said, wait out Trump, there's a new regime is coming in, we'll cut a new deal.
Right.
Is that exactly what he did?
Yeah, so John Kerry is kind of in a class by himself. I mean, you have Barack Obama's, of course, he's the Mount Rushmore of this problem, and John Kerry's probably right next to him. But yeah, Kerry made this point. He would go to the Iranian leadership, the presidents, and say, wait, don't make a deal with Trump. Don't capitulate to Trump, because Biden is coming. A Democratic president is coming. But the point is, coming back to the original point, we have to be standing shoulder to shoulder. Whether you support this war or not, whether you think this is a good idea or not, we have thousands of troops in harm's way. It is every American's duty to stand with them and to make their fight as easy as possible, to see to it that they succeed.
Not to
undermine them.
And to destroy the morale of the American people.
The morale. Look, it's one thing to say you don't support the war, or you think it was a mistake for whatever reason. But if you cannot admit that the Iranians this is one of the most evil regimes in the history of the world, and probably the single most evil regime since Hitler, and that the world would be better served if there were regime change, and that there'd be peace all around the world, or we advance the cause of peace if this regime were removed, and it would advance America's national security interest around the globe. If you can't at least make that concession, then you really have no business being an elected official, because then you are so disturbed and you're such a moron and you're so incompetent that you really have no business being in elected office. So we have to start from the premise that that's how evil this regime is. And then if you want to debate what's the best way to deal with it, that's fine. But when you have Americans in harm's way, you are obligated to do whatever you can to make their mission easier.
Absolutely. We have to take a break now. This is Let the Record Show. Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party is out this week. Eric Lavine, an attorney, commentator, and essayist, is here with me in the studio. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in but a few moments with more important and interesting conversation. Stay with us, please.
Eczema is unpredictable, but you can flare less with Ebglyss, a once-monthly treatment for moderate to severe eczema. After an initial 4-month or longer dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Baseball is back, and the first pitch is on Netflix. The New York Yankees, led by 7-time All-Star Aaron Judge, head to the San Francisco Bay to take on Rafael Devers' San Francisco Giants. This season kicks off with one exclusive opening night game. Watch MLB Opening Night, the New York Yankees versus the San Francisco Giants, live on Netflix. Wednesday, March 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Fox News is now streaming live on Fox One. When it matters most, turn to the voices you trust. We go beyond the headlines, bringing you the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Live coverage, sharp analysis, real perspective. At home or on the go, stay connected when it counts. Stream Fox News on Fox One. Download today.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is out under the weather this week, but in the studio with me is Eric Lavine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I want to follow up from our earlier discussion, Eric. I want to raise a few points for this second segment. First question I want us to focus on is what more should Trump and the administration be doing in this effort? Second, this whole phenomena coming from both the left and the extreme left, extreme right, blaming the Jews for this war. And this is the Jews' war, not the United States war. And the third thing, I want to talk about that fiasco, that horror story of the attack at Gracie Mansion by two ISIS sympathizers who had the will, but not the wherewithal, to destroy human lives outside of Gracie Mansion. And the media, by the way, lying about it, saying this was an attack against Mandami and his beloved wife, when in fact Mandami and his wife were never under serious threat. Not only were they not in the building, but this was extreme Islamists versus extreme right-wing idiots. And the Islamists are the ones who came in with the weapons to blow up innocent bystanders there or demonstrators there exercising their First Amendment rights. So this is quite an episode. We'll get back to that. So this is the question I want to ask you, Eric. Israel's under attack. They're using cluster bombs, and as you know, cluster bombs not only attack military, but the whole point is to harm civilians with all kinds of added components in these bombs that are designed to wreak havoc and destroy and maim people.
Well, they're outlawed by international law against any target.
Right, but the point.
But they're dealing with the Iranians.
They're dealing with the Iranians, and they respect international law, of course, because that's what they're noted for. So you have these cluster bombs on Wednesday. The attack was from both Lebanon, from the Hezbollah group, as well as from Iran, and had over 100 missiles and drones coming at them, and the Israelis were able to swat down about half of them. So that's the gambit, to overwhelm the ability to stop. And it's a question of a war of attrition. Will their missiles and their drones be extinguished before our defense mechanisms, whether it's the United States or Israel's, or the Arab countries that have been attacked in this insane movement by the Iranians to attack their fellow Muslims. So, I say you have to do whatever is necessary to take these guys out once and for all. Senator Fetterman said you have to take out the baby Ayatollah, and you have to get rid of him. But that's not enough. You have to take out all the underlings, that whole regime, the institutional mechanisms, and their personnel. That's what has to be done. So, how do you do that? Well, based on my reading, it's very, very hard to have regime change only based on an air campaign, an air war. You can't do it. You really need to have troops on the ground. Raises the question, whose troops and where should the movement be made? And there's something else that came up, which is there's the oil depot, this island, I think it's called Karg.
Karg Island.
Karg Island. Now the question becomes, Trump has said to the Israelis, don't go after the oil infrastructure of the Iranians. All due respect to Donald Trump, maybe that's exactly what you have to do, is totally destroy their economy. And with respect to this island, I don't want American troops going in there taking it over because I don't want to see American lives lost. As far as I'm concerned, you could wipe it off the face of the earth and let them worry about rebuilding it. And if you wipe it off the face of the earth, that's everything they have. They will, since they're 5th century or 6th century savages, that will send them back to 5th or 6th century. And that's okay with me. I would take out that island. And I would tell them, if they don't stop right now with unconditional surrender, that's the next step. That island is gone. Not that we're invading it, not that we're taking over it and holding it. It's gone. It will be obliterated, and give a clock and say, you have 12 hours to stop the war. Now, one of the clever things the now deceased Ayatollah did is he decentralized the command centers. So what he did is he took these Islamic Revolutionary Guard types and some of the military types, and he decentralized command structure so that each one of them is acting, I think, 31 or 32 provinces?
32.
32. And so they're all acting independently of another, and they're not having any centralized authority to tell them what to do. That was a clever gimmick because that enables them to survive more easily, and it makes it more difficult to take them out. But I would take one territory, one province at a time, wipe them out. Take the next one, wipe it out. Next one, and keep doing it seriatim until you've removed all those infrastructures in this decentralized command. So that's my armchair war strategy. What's yours?
So I think to the extent that Donald Trump made any mistakes in fighting this battle, I think the mistake was that he could have done a better job, I believe, in laying out what's at stake for the American people and Western civilization and messaging before this started. I think people generally viscerally understand that this is a regime that's antithetical to humanity and really needs to be destroyed. But I think he could have done a better job of laying out for the American people of what's at stake, and I think that would have given him more latitude to do some of these things you're talking about. I do not agree with you about destroying Karg Island. By shutting down the Straits of Hormuz by itself, the Iranians have already strangled their ability to export oil. The destruction of the Karg Island theory would be that, okay, now you can't export oil, no oil to export. So whether they can't export it because they've shut off the shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz to be able to do it, or whether you've destroyed Karg Island and they don't have any oil to export. The problem with destroying Karg Island is that at some point we're hoping that there will be regime change, and we want that regime, the new government, to be able to function. We want it to be able to have income. We want it to be able to feed its people and not become an economic basket case, or at least make that climb out of the basket a little bit easier. So I don't know that I agree with you about destroying Karg Island. Some of the oil infrastructure that the Israelis have been destroying has been infrastructure that is particular to the terror network of the Iranians, the IRGC. They have their own depots. Those I'm all in favor of destroying. But I think we have to focus. Our first focus, in addition to what we're already doing, is we got to do whatever is necessary to open the Straits of Hormuz. and make sure that the Gulf Arab states, Kuwait, Oman, UAE, Saudi Arabia have the ability to export their oil through the Straits of Hormuz. So that's where I think the first emphasis would be. Now, I'm not a military expert. I don't know how you do that. But I have to think that this is something that's been thought through by our military, by our generals, by our Secretary of State. These are really able people. This is some of the smartest people on the planet. So I have to think that they've been focusing on that. And now is the time to implement whatever plan they have to do that. In terms of boots on the ground, here's a perfect example of why it may have served Donald Trump well to speak to the American people a little more clearly or over a longer period of time as to the threat that the regime changed, because it's going to be difficult to put boots on the ground because everyone's going to think Iraq. This isn't Iraq. But I think unlike Iraq, where you had, there was really no cohesive group to be able to put together, and only American troops could do it or only coalition troops could do it. There have been people, and when we went into Iraq, the theory was that the people would come out to the streets to welcome us. In Iran, the people have already been in the streets. So I'd like to think that we have in place a plan to be able to arm and supply the Iranian people who oppose the regime and want to take their place. There has to be, I have to think that the CIA and the Mossad and other intelligence services around the world have been working around the clock to be picking leaders of various factions or various provinces in Iran to be arming them and to plan with them, provide intelligence.
So why did they discourage well, let me ask you this. Why have they discouraged the Kurds then?
Well, the problem because while the majority of the Iranian people are interested in regime change, the overwhelming majority of Iranian people are not interested in the country falling apart. And the concern is that if the Kurds lead the way, that the country will be dismembered. And then it'll be difficult to be able to have a popular uprising to remove the regime. Because at that point, the concern is that people will then start rallying around the flag. And we don't want that. So we want indigenous Iranians, whether they're Persians, Azaris, whatever their ethnic background is within Iran, we want those people rising up, and those are the people we want to be working with. Look, I'm very sympathetic to the Kurds. I think these are people that deserve their own country. I mean, they've been fighting for centuries, and they've been fighting with us. When my son served in Syria, he fought shoulder to shoulder with Kurds against ISIS. So I'm all in favor of the Kurds having their own country, but I'm not sure that in this circumstance it makes sense because there was a real concern that Iran would become dismembered and we'd lose the popular support of the people. Look, I don't really care if Iran falls apart necessarily, but for the war effort, it's important that the people who support that we want, the Iranian people writ large, we want them on our side, and they don't want the country to be dismembered. So that's why the Kurds may not be the best option. So I think focusing on opening the Straits of Hormuz, finding people, indigenous Iranians who are opposed to the regime, arming them, supplying them, providing them intelligence, I think they have to be our boots on the ground. We may need force multipliers, whether it's Israelis or American intelligence officers on the ground with them. I'd be all for that, but I don't think politically the United States can be committing large numbers of troops on the ground, because if they get bogged down, that's going to be.
What about the nuclear site?
Well, if we determine that the nuclear site has not been completely obliterated, well, we got to make sure it's completely obliterated. I also have no problem if there's a targeted, if we put boots on the ground for a targeted attack to go into Isfahan, the nuclear facility there, or the other big facilities, if we think it's necessary. I have no problem with a target attack. You send in some Navy SEALs, some special ops, get in there and make sure it's completely finished. I think that's perfectly appropriate. But I think, to be committing boots on the ground for hand-to-hand combat with the Iranians, with this regime, I'm not sure politically or even militarily it makes a lot of sense. So I think we made part a little bit of ways on that. So regarding the terrorist attack outside of Gracie Mansion, so just to set the stage, you correctly point out you have these white supremacists come out there for an anti-Muslim rant These are grotesque people, and they should be ignored, and hopefully they'll go away. But, we need to push back against their hatred. And then there's a counter protest, fine, as long as it's peaceful. But then you get these two guys, Amir Balat, and who is his companion, and Ibrahim Kayumi from Pennsylvania. They show up with an IED and they toss it into the crowd. So CNN, in its first coverage, put out the story, 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home. Here's what we know so far. Well, this idea that it's just 2 guys out on a frolic.
Why would anybody want to bother these 2 nice young people?
Yeah. And, of course, they lead this idea of protest outside of Zohran Mamdani's home as if he were the target. Of course, that is just utter nonsense. He wasn't the target. The target were the white supremacists. And these are 2 American citizens who were radicalized by ISIS, who are out there to kill and maim as many people as they can. So CNN was chastised for that, happy description. So they come out with a news story. And they say, quote, a post regarding the 2 individuals arrested for throwing homemade bombs outside of New York City's Zohran Mamdani's home failed to reflect the gravity of the incident, thereby breaching the editorial standards we require for all our reporting. It has therefore been deleted. Close quote. So all they've done is double down on the notion that Zohran Mamdani was the target, which, of course, he was not. So what's particularly bizarre about this, or laughable about this, is, frankly, Zohran Mamdani issued a statement. His statement says, what did I do with it? Oh, give me 1 second. Mamdani responded.
He attacked the white supremacists.
Right, he attacked the white supremacists.
His lead was the white supremacists.
Oh, here we go. Let me also be clear about something else. New York City will never tolerate violence, whether from protests or counter-protests. Many of the counter-protesters met this display of bigotry peacefully with a vision of a city that is welcoming to all. But a few did not. 2 men, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, traveled from Pennsylvania and attempted to bring violence to New York City. They are suspected of coming here to commit an act of terrorism. There is a video of these 2 individuals throwing 2 devices towards the protest. The police department has determined that these were improvised explosive devices made to injure, maim, or worse. And then he thanks the NYPD. But not once does he mention, even though he knew, that these were radical Islamic terrorists radicalized by ISIS. He failed because he wanted to give cover to these guys. He's tamping down on the severity of this. Now, this should come as a surprise to no one, because what we also learned this week is that First Lady Rama Duwaji, or as Zohran Mamdani likes to refer to her as the love of his life, it turned out that she has been sending out positive memes and likes and embracing those groups that have been touting the October 7th attacks. She has been supporting the October 7th attacks. So let's just remember what she liked, quote unquote. She liked raping women. She liked cutting open the womb of pregnant women, ripping out the fetus and murdering the baby in front of a screaming mother. She liked putting babies in ovens and cooking them alive. She liked murdering parents in front of children and children in front of parents. She liked burning entire families alive. She liked massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor concert. And she liked kidnapping hundreds of people, including infants and 80-plus-year-old grandmothers. Those are the people that our First Lady, the love of Zohran Mamdani's life, liked. And when Mamdani was asked about it, his response was, she's a private citizen. So that's okay. She's a private citizen. So she's entitled to those views, apparently.
And by the way, let me raise this issue. When you point this out and you criticize her for a lack of a moral conscience, for obscenely endorsing this kind of brutality in humanity, then when you criticize this and you point this out, you're accused of the worst crime in the world, Islamophobia.
Well, that's the gimmick.
As if pointing out the reality makes you anti-Muslim.
Well, that's the gimmick. And this one is it's tired and people don't buy into it anymore. At least they shouldn't. The idea that if you were to criticize, you should be afraid to criticize people because you'll be accused of being a bigot. You know what? If my pointing out that this woman's deranged, that she's a hateful, anti-Semitic bitch, then I'm a bigot because that's who this woman is. And this is the love of the life of Zohran Mamdani.
The so-called First Lady of the City of New York.
Right, it's the so-called First Lady of the City of New York. But again, let's remember who Zohran Mamdani is. I mean, his problem with the IED, for the most part, is not so much that it was not so much that somebody used an IED. It's that they directed it at the wrong party. If they would have thrown it at Israelis, we know that his wife would think it was a great idea. And we know that Zohran Mamdani is on the record of doesn't believe that the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist.
And globalize Intifada.
He wants to globalize the Intifada. He won't use the term, but if you want...
I won't use those words.
I won't use those words, but if you want to kill Jews and you want to destroy the state of Israel, don't let me stop you. Just don't use those words. I mean, this is the same guy when he heard about the attacks on Iran. This was his quote. Today's military strikes on Iran, carried out by the United States and Israel, are a catastrophic escalation in an illegal war of aggression. Bombing cities, killing civilians, opening a new theater of war. Americans do not want this. They do not want another war in pursuit of regime change. They want relief from affordability. They want peace. I'm focused on making sure that every New Yorker is safe. Additionally, I love this one. Additionally, I want to speak directly to Iranian New Yorkers. You are part of the fabric of the city. You are our neighbors, small business owners, students, artists, workers, and community leaders. You will be safe here. Now,
that's why they're here.
Exactly.
Because they fled the tyranny of Iran.
Precisely. They support this war. That's another thing that's so amazing to me. The Iranians in Iran support the attacks. They want regime change. The Iranians around the globe who have left, they want regime change. The Iranians in California and in New York, they all want regime change. The only ones who don't want regime change are the Democratic Socialists of America and the weaklings like Chuck Schumer and Tim Kaine and Chris Murphy, who don't have the cojones to stand up to the socialist, communist, Jew haters.
Well, on that high note, we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show.
But I have so much more to say.
Well, we have a third segment, so everybody has to stay tuned.
Okay.
So, Jesse Garcia, our esteemed co-host, is under the weather today. He's out. We'll be back next week. Eric Lavine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, who has more to say, is still with me in the studio. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us for our final segment with more important and interesting conversation coming ahead. Thank you.
Picture this. Me, Reese Witherspoon, in London, ordering fish and chips so often they might start wrapping me in paper. I'm traveling with my Wells Fargo Autograph Journey card, so I earn rewards wherever I book travel. 5 times points with hotels, 4 times with airlines, 3 times on restaurants and other travel, and 1 point on other purchases. Imagine getting rewarded for eating a toad in the hole. Wait, what is a toad in a hole?
Visit wellsfargo.com/autograph journey. Terms apply.
Rated T for teen.
Hey everyone, it's the best in the world, CM Punk, back to shake up WWE 2K26. This year, the show never stops. You're running the greatest spectacle on earth with the biggest roster we've ever had. Over 400 superstars and legends from every era. Stack the tables, break the rules, burn it all down. And yeah, my very own showcase, telling my story the way it should have been told. Because when the show never stops, anything is possible. Available March 13th, pre-order now.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Hey everybody, welcome to your 30-second laughing session brought to you by The Laughing Cow. Ready to laugh? In 3, 2, 1, and... Okay! Great job, everybody! Now unpeel a wedge of the Laughing Cow Light Spreadable Cheese, a delicious snack with 2 grams of protein and 25 calories per wedge. Feels good to have a cow, huh?
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. Chairman Jesse Garcia, Republican Party, our esteemed co-host, is out today. He's under the weather. Hopefully he'll be back with us next week. With me in the studio is noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Lavine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. When we broke for the break, we were advised that noted attorney, essayist, commentator Eric Lavine had more to say. But I want to switch gears, and I want to see if he has more to say about the following. You know, the Democratic Party is...
I'm sure I can find the words.
I was very concerned about that you can find the words. I always, every time I sit down with you in the studio, I always say, will Eric find the words? And the answer is, who knows? So let me start off by giving a few words on a subject. The great mantra of the Democratic Party is affordability, affordability, affordability. Never do they confront the fact it's their policies, their overtaxation, their overregulation, their mandates that have caused the so-called affordability crisis. And that's the whole problem. So people are fleeing New York State and New York City because we're overtaxed, we're overregulated, the quality of life is being diminished. The people who provide the goods, the jobs, the services, the tax base, support the charities, the cultural institutions, the educational institutions, the hospitals, they're fleeing. The people, the solid middle class, upper middle class, and the wealthy class, they're being under constant attack because they want to make it much more fair, comrade, to seize more and more of their resources, their assets. They want to raise the minimum wage from $17 an hour in New York City to $30 an hour. Now, you know what that does to an economy? It means small businesses cannot survive. If they do survive, they have to let people go because they can't afford it. So people will lose their jobs. So much for affordability and full employment. They do not understand when you hamper redevelopment of real estate, building real estate, when you mandate the electrification of everything and the retrofitting that will cause this, and you don't have a grid, it will be unsustainable. The costs will go up. You will not have heat in the winter or air conditioning in the summer. They do not understand this. They say, rent control, rent control, rent control. That's a great idea. So you've created an economic disincentive to build or to maintain your property. People will flee because their expenses are high, whether it's insurance, whether it's the basic maintenance, whether it's the real property taxes, whether it's their employees. Whatever it takes to run a building, whether it's a rental building or a co-op or a condo, you're going to make it unaffordable, and people are going to be driven out of this city. So much for affordability. Now what do they want to do? So they want to raise the minimum wage to $30. We've discussed that. They also want to raise taxes on the so-called wealthy. I have a real question as a matter of constitutional law, whether they have a right to target a particular group of people and seize their assets because they decide it's wealthy. Generally, they say billionaires, but then they take it down to millionaires. And then they take it even down further to people who make $500,000 a year. And it always works that you get an easy target, the so-called billionaires. By the way, the billionaires pay about, and the millionaires pay about 48% of the taxes in this city.
And they'll leave.
And they will leave. They will vote with their feet, and they will leave. If you have any doubt about people voting with their feet, look what happened in California. People are fleeing. Look what happened in Washington State. The idiots in the state legislature and the idiot governor, Washington State, just signed law with respect to a state income tax. That's swell, even though it's unconstitutional under the state constitution of Washington, but they packed their Supreme Court with a bunch of left-wing loons, so they'll probably say it's okay. But the fact of the matter is, what do you have? You have a wealth tax. And the guy who started the whole coffee phenomena with respect to Starbucks, Howard Schultz, he's leaving Seattle and he's moving out Starbucks out of the state of Washington.
He's not exactly a conservative.
And he's not a conservative. So everybody's voting. And a lot of these techno giants, the so-called billionaires, most of whose politics is on the liberal left, they're fleeing California and Washington State and Oregon because they realize these policies are unsustainable. They drive people out. So we have a country divided. How is the country divided? You have common sense people who don't want to leave New York or California or Washington or Oregon or Colorado. They don't want to leave. They like it there. But they're being driven out because they've made it unaffordable. And then you add on to that the whole culture of wokeism, that if you use the wrong pronoun, the last capital crime in America, God forbid you use the last pronoun. And if you don't sign the letter with your preferred pronoun, you get fired because you're not being politically correct. That's the culture they've created, and people vote with their feet and they leave. So now they're talking about raising taxes. And the state legislature is in New York State, the great wise people of those bodies, the Assembly Speaker and the Majority Leader of the Senate, they've now pushed through one House bills laying out more taxes for corporations, more taxes for individuals. That will make us either number one or number two most taxed state in the country. It's ridiculous. You're driving out people. Who's going to pay for all these wonderful social programs that you want? Who's going to pay for your free buses and your free child care? Who's going to support an economy that needs resources? Who is going to do this? I don't know, but I'll tell you who's not going to do it: the people who flee. It won't be their problem. Then what they'll try to do, like they try to do in California, say, well, we're going to impose this wealth tax, and if you flee, we're going to make it retroactive, and we're going to go after you when you move to Florida or to Texas. Good luck with that. So, affordability, Democrats look in the mirror. Left-wingers, socialists, communists look in the mirror. If the place is becoming unaffordable, it's because of your policies, not because of productive people who believe in the free enterprise system, working hard, seizing equality of opportunity, and going forward and producing jobs and services and opportunities for their fellow Americans. Eric.
So a perfect example of what you're talking about is Obamacare. Of course, Obamacare was supposed to bend down the cost curve. You like a doctor, you keep your doctor. You like your plan, you keep your plan. All three lies. Of course, the healthcare has never been more expensive. It's never been more inefficient. And the great irony here is the Democrats are ranting and raving and jumping up and down and pulling out their hair, saying we have to extend healthcare subsidies. Why do we have to extend healthcare subsidies? This is supposed to make it affordable. So you want to extend these subsidies because you have created a plan that is completely unaffordable. So to your point, Richard, that this is a problem of the Democrats making, you're 100% correct. But Republicans have to be able to do a better job of explaining why it is the Democrats who have created this problem. Up until Donald Trump rolled back the Great Green New Deal, the cost of energy was through the roof. Why? Because under the Green New Deal, in order to make solar panels and wind turbines and electric vehicles, somewhat cost effective, you had to drive or to encourage, not even cost effective, but to encourage people to use it, you had to make the cost of fossil fuels through the roof. So that's part of the reason why the Democrats were so insistent on killing the fossil fuel industry. Because
but look what happened in Europe. Their economy is crashing, and their ability to sustain themselves economically is crashing because of their obsession with this Green New Deal nonsense.
Right. And by the way, and it also made them dependent on Russia.
And China. Because
they made the solar panels. Right, exactly.
Who supplies the components for all this green energy nonsense? It's the Chinese.
And in terms of the inflation that we have, look, the inflation that was at 9-10% during the Biden administration was a result of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Isn't that a joke?
It's a total joke.
You have to hand it to the Democrats. They have this great ability to come up with messaging and clever phrasing, which has nothing to do with reality.
Well, that's the Orwellian aspect of it. You take words that have one meaning and then you apply a meaning that's 180 degrees from what it actually means. But people hear war is peace and peace is war. They don't know which way to turn. But the wealth tax, I think there's something even more insidious than what you're describing about the wealth tax, which is a terrible idea. And I don't know that it's constitutional because you're allowed to tax income, but I don't know that you can tax wealth. That'll be an interesting issue. But what you do with the wealth tax is you go out and figure out what is your net worth. Let's say you're a farmer. Your farmland is worth a lot of money. So you come out and you say, all right, your farm is worth, the land is worth $20 million. We're going to tax you on that $20 million.
Every year.
But I don't have the money. The farmer doesn't have the money to pay that tax.
Sell.
So they have to sell the farm. Exactly. They have to lose their livelihood in order to pay this stupid, ill-conceived wealth tax. It's crazy. But also what I think is going to be at play here is it makes the ability of government, if you really want to misuse it, and we know that Democrats can, Republicans can as well. But so you come out and you say to someone, tell me how much you're worth. Someone says I'm worth $1 million. Just take round numbers because my math is terrible. But they come back and say, you know what? No, that picture on your wall is really worth $10,000 and not $1,000. You're committing fraud. You're committing tax fraud. You didn't really declare properly the value of your wealth. And now we're going to prosecute you. You're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of politicization of the criminal process, even more than we've seen to date.
On alleged tax fraud.
On alleged tax fraud, if you allow this to come into fruition.
By the way, in terms of housing, I'll tell you what's very interesting. Let's say you buy a house for $250,000. And because of inflation, the house goes up in value, and there's no indexing for inflation, by the way, either under federal, city, or state law. So it's now worth $500,000. So you now have a capital gain of $250,000. And ordinarily, you'd hold on to it or sell it and then pay your capital gain.
Because there's no taxable event.
Right. Or you'd pass it on to your children. But now they're going to say, well, you have this capital gain. Oh, even though it's unrealized, you haven't sold anything, you don't have money in your pocket, sitting there, you have to pay tax on that increase of the $250,000. And every year we're going to come back and tell you you have to pay more money. And at a certain point, to your credit, you point out, at a certain point, you have to get rid of it. You have to sell it. So what it's going to do, it's going to force people to sell their homes, which will then drive, and because there's taxation, which is confiscatory, sell, but they're going to be selling on a down market. Amazing.
Well, that's the goal. So because in the DSA's mind, in Zohar Mamdani's mind, and these crazy people's minds who want to bring about this wealth tax, they believe that government should be in charge of housing. Private property and private homes are something that they want to get rid of. And this is one of the vehicles to doing that. This is not how the country is supposed to work. This is not about entrepreneurship. This is about basically the government in hyperdrive saying to you, we know better what's for you than you do. And we're going to tell you. And if you don't like it, we're going to punish you. And if you don't like it, we're going to take away everything you've worked for. That's the Soviet model. That's not the American model. But that's who these people are. When you have the Democratic Socialists of America, which have crawled into the dead carcass of the Democratic Party, they want to bring Soviet-style government to the United States.
And where has that worked out well, by the way?
Exactly.
In the history of the world.
It fails everywhere. Marxism, socialism, communism fails everywhere and anywhere, anytime it's been tried. Whether it's in the Soviet Union, Cuba, Venezuela, China, North Korea, Vietnam, you name it. It fails everywhere. But that's what they want to bring here. But then, to your point, Richard, about messaging, they come in and say, we have a new vision, a new way to govern, a new way to...
A new vision, same old.
It's the worst of the 20th century that they now want to bring to the 21st century, and they call it new.
And the wonderful thing about this, and people should not forget this, more people have died way over 100 million people have died because of the wars that these tyrants, these dictators, these absolute radical, insane people have tried to impose, whether through murder or re-education camps or mass starvation, deliberate, calculated starvation. These people are evil, and they have to be stopped.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, among Hitler, Mao, and Stalin, Hitler killed the fewest people. Mao was first, Stalin was second, and Hitler took the bronze.
Well, this has been Let the Record Show with noted attorney, commentator, essayist Eric Lavine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We've missed our good friend Jesse Garcia this week. We look forward to having her back with us next week on next week's edition of Let the Record Show. Thank you for listening. And as always, God bless you, and God bless your families, and God bless America. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show with Judge Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Lavine. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder. What the heck is going on here?
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.